As you were.
It's been said that nobody beats G.I. Joe, and for the heyday of our favorite real American heroes, this was true not only in the world of G.I. Joe's battles against Cobra the Enemy, but also true when you walked into a toy aisle and saw the piles of boxes and carded figures dominating the shelves and pegs of your local stores. And as we take the time capsule to discuss the history of G.I. Joe back in 1986, you'll see that this lineup of toys did a lot to capitalize on the momentum of previous years. And let's be clear, G.I. Joe pulled out all the stops in 1985, and in hindsight, it might be surprising that 1986 turned out to be pretty spectacular by comparison. At this point in time, G.I. Joe was firmly entrenched in the world of pop culture. Yes, you had toys, cartoons, and comics that were certainly in the same league as G.I. Joe in terms of its leading status among the young male demographic. And for kids, the characters of G.I. Joe were every bit as iconic as those that we'd see in the various other media genres such as cinema, popular music, and on television screens in this same year. And as part of the enjoyment that we hope these history videos bring, let's have a look at the very toys themselves that gave us so many memories to fill our heart's imagination when we were children.
Hawk returned this year, having been promoted from Colonel to Brigadier General in the time since his first release. Now filling the top brass role for G.I. Joe, he was the one that our field leaders all reported to. Just as capable on the battlefield as he is leading from the front office, Hawk's character is significant in all forms of G.I. Joe, be it in the comics, animated series, and toys.
The Joes would further expand their command hierarchy with Wayne Sneeden. Codename Beachhead. A trainer and instructor type, Beachhead is a soldier's soldier, and what he lacks in hygiene, he makes up for in work ethic.
What do you mean? I don't use deodorant. That's what I want to talk to you about.
Of note, he is among the lineage of military or enforcement types in his family, as there was yet another Wayne Sneeden who would appear later on as a member of the Cops franchise. This year's lineup would also feature more characters with much needed specialties to broaden the Joes' range for various missions. You had Lowlight, an infantryman who was also a skilled marksman, and who happened to be right at home in the cover of darkness. He does have an easily losable bipod, so do keep this in mind. Then there's Lifeline, a pacifist by nature who primarily served as the team's medic, and thus giving Doc some much needed help with healing up wounds and getting the Joe troops ready for another battle. There's also Mainframe, a technology and computer specialist who could also get the job done on the battlefield, assuming of course that Zarana didn't keep him distracted like she did in the Season 2 episode titled Computer Complications.
Continuing with the technology theme was Dial Tone. A radio communications expert, Dial Tone knows more than anyone the importance of a radio operative in the field. It'll be his comms duty that makes sure that the Joes in combat get the support they need when they need it.
Sci-Fi joined this roster as well, being a laser trooper and rifleman. A man of precision and accuracy, Sci-Fi's bright colors actually make him look a bit like a 1990s G.I. Joe figure, which makes him a unique standout of sorts here in 1986. Continuing on the Marine theme, similar to 1983's Gung-Ho figure, we have Leatherneck. A gunnery sergeant by rank, this uncouth and somewhat unlikable Joe was as tough as they came and certainly hard-nosed. He's definitely someone you would want to watch your back in the field of battle. Leatherneck played a big part in the second season of the cartoon, and in a key episode titled The Rotten Egg, he inadvertently finds himself at a graduation ceremony of a Cobra military training academy where he settles an old score with a former rival. We have Roadblock, who would get his second figure in this 1986 release year. Keeping his role as a heavy machine gunner who also enjoyed cooking a meal or two for his fellow Joes, Roadblock's importance to the franchise is one that we can't state enough, as indicated by the History of G.I. Joe 1984 release that I produced earlier on in the life of the channel. His status as a G.I. Joe icon is arguably only rivaled by that of Duke or Snake Eyes.
And what would a year of G.I. Joe be without heading back to colder temperatures? Iceberg is this year's snow infantry trooper. This Joe had a knack for cold weather survival, joining the likes of Snow Job and Frostbite in the years prior to this. Looking at the aquatic edition for this year, the Navy SEAL wetsuit entered the Joe lineup. Someone with a bit of an attitude, wetsuit would sometimes spout off in arguments with Leatherneck, adding to the memorable dynamic between G.I. Joe characters. In any case, if you're going for an underwater mission, this was indeed an important Joe to take along with you.
The Joes would then take to the skies in multiple ways, in particular the Tomahawk, which was a transport helicopter that could hold a ton of Joes. This vehicle had a lot of features such as a winch below the helicopter body, several bombs, as well as a front cannon and machine guns mounted next to the troopers' seats. The rotor blades on this one have been removed for ease of storage back into the box. Lift Ticket is the pilot that came packed in with the Tomahawk. Don't lose the microphone that attaches to his helmet, as it will be a hard one to track down again if you happen to misplace it. And for actual attack formations in the air, you had the Conquest X-30, picking up right where the Sky Striker left off in 1983, but with a more flamboyant design. The Conquest is known for its unique stickers, which gave it its own flavor and personality. And the forward swept wings are a huge part of what made it stand out. For some fans, this is their G.I. Joe combat jet of choice. The Conquest fighter pilot went by the name of Slipstream, who actually developed a bit of a rivalry, but also a bit of a bond with a female Stratoviper in the late Season 2 episode known as In the Presence of Mine Enemies. We would see some key land-based vehicle drivers this year as well, in particular Cross Country, a skilled heavy equipment operator who came with the Havoc, or Heavy Articulated Vehicle Ordnance Carrier, which was actually a vehicle within a vehicle when you consider the reconnaissance craft that it came with. And as amazing as all these vehicle drivers and pilots are, there's one that I'm looking forward to featuring the most in this video. Who else but Sergeant Slaughter? But to do it some additional justice, I brought in a member of the Slaughter family, namely my good friend Kelly Slaughter daughter Remus, to do the honors in introducing her dad to this history video series of mine.
Oddies disease! The Sarge moved over from the wrestling ring and into the world of G.I. Joe this year. In fact, since the Sarge could kick ass so fast, 2 versions of him were made. With some proof of purchase certificates and a small amount of change, you could get the first version of Sarge as this year's mail-away figure. Sporting his USA tank top, the Sarge was so tough, he didn't even need a frickin' firearm. All he needed was a baton to whip his fellow Joes into shape, or to send Cobra packing in a ditty bag. An itty-bitty ditty bag.
Or in a ditty bag. An itty-bitty ditty bag.
And because he's the best of the best, he was both a mail-away figure and a vehicle driver this year. So this black tank top version of him came packed in with his tag team Terminator, also known as the Triple T. This vehicle was one of the things that helped my dad become the icon he is in the world of G.I. Joe, even if he was already the best wrestler I've ever known. These would be the first 2 and probably the most memorable Sergeant Slaughter figures in the vintage G.I. Joe line. But the best thing is not only was he the first living G.I. Joe, my dad would remain a real-life G.I. Joe ambassador for pretty much his whole life. He's always taking the time to meet his fans, even giving out a Cobra clutch or 2. Ken, thanks for bringing me along for the ride in this history video. And to all my fellow G.I. Joe fans out there, you're dismissed, maggots!
Thank you, Kelly, and as we salute the Sarge for everything he's done in the world of both G.I. Joe and professional wrestling, I'll quickly point out once again, for clarity, that the mail-away version of Sarge was initially thought to be a 1985 figure, but was eventually clarified by several key sources to be part of the 1986 lineup. A similar statement could be made about William the Refrigerator Perry, or the Fridge if you prefer. He was initially reported to be a 1986 figure, but has been confirmed as a 1987 release.
We then get to an important offering within the 1986 range, the G.I. Joe Special Mission Brazil 5-figure box set. This set was a Toys R Us exclusive, which came packed in with a cassette tape containing a short story for children to listen to. And this continues the theme from the year before, where the Listen and Fun tripwire was included with a cassette as well. A new character was introduced in this set, namely Claymore, the leader of this special mission. Claymore is a captain with a fantastic reputation and is respected by all branches of the military. He's brought in by General Hawk only for very special assignments, and his figure commands a high price on the collector market, especially when you find him complete.
The rest of the Special Mission Brazil set consists of recolors of 4 other Joes from this year, namely Dial Tone, Leatherneck, Mainframe, and Wetsuit. These 4 brave Joes have just the right skill needed to support Claymore for this very special assignment. And while that covers the figure lineup on the Joe front, there were still several other small vehicles and battle station sets that 1986 had to offer. For example, a one-man attack boat called the Devilfish, which was great for your sea missions. There was also the low crawl vehicle or LCV Recon sled. Then of course, you have the aforementioned battle stations, namely the laser artillery weapon, or LAW if you prefer, and the very nicely detailed outpost defender as well. This many figures and vehicles was quite a lot for children of 1986 to keep up with. But our heroes needed some new villains to keep our adventures fresh, and as such, Cobra the Enemy gave us a great lineup of toys this year too.
Step aside, Cobra Commander, because the Cobra Emperor wants your spot atop the Cobra ranks. 1986 introduces Serpentor, whose DNA is an amalgamation of some of world history's greatest military leaders and conquerors. For some collectors, Serpentor is their true Cobra leader ahead of the Commander. It's only fitting that we got both the Cobra Emperor and a general for G.I. Joe in the same year. Did we mention how great 1986 is? Serpentor came packed with the Air Chariot, which had a regal look to it and allowed Serpentor to battle the Joes in the air. Yes, they say nobody beats G.I. Joe, but Serpentor would beg to differ with that statement.
Serpentor was the creation of his loyal scientist, Dr. Mindbender. A true mad scientist, this character walked around shirtless, yet he wore a cape, and this truly exuded the quirky flamboyance of the 1980s. His file card lists him as someone who was an orthodontist at one time in his life, but experimented on himself, and sometime after, he would become the deluded scientist who was just perfect for the ranks of Cobra the Enemy. Cobra's biker gang for hire, the Dreadnoks, would receive a roster expansion this year as well. Specifically, Zartan's siblings would join their ranks in toy form. His sister Zarana was also an expert in terms of disguise and was also a skilled assassin, though she did display a somewhat nicer side to her character as indicated by her soft spot for the G.I. Joe mainframe in the Sundoe cartoon episode mentioned earlier. The figure came in 2 versions, namely an earlier version that had earrings on the figure and then a more common version with a different head sculpt that did not have any earrings. The group of Dreadnok siblings would be rounded out by Zartan and Zarana's brother, Xandar, in this year. Though he was less high profile than his siblings, Xandar had a similar covertness in his abilities too, being a master of camouflage. And like his siblings, Xandar's body could change color when under heat or sunlight. Monkey Wrench would be another to join the Dreadnoks. He's quite recognizable for the harpoon gun that he carries, as well as his affinity for explosives and loud noises. He would join the Dreadnoks formally in the 2nd season of the Sundoe animated cartoon by winning a brawl amongst a group of other thugs to earn his way into the dreaded biker gang officially. And right after Monkey Wrench joined the team, Thrasher would introduce himself in the original cartoon as well, and made himself useful because he was able to provide his own vehicle to their ranks. And that vehicle was none other than the Thunder Machine, which was Thrasher's own conglomeration of truck parts and automobile parts. It would serve as a ride that the Dreadnoks could count on an ongoing basis. And of course, there would be some figures that would become signature army builders for Cobra, namely the Battle Android Troopers, or B.A.T.S. These were probably the most expendable of all of Cobra's forces, given that they were literal robots simply programmed to kill and destroy. The number of attachments that came with the B.A.T.S made for great play value, assuming naturally that you didn't lose them during playtime. Joining the B.A.T.S this year were the Cobra Vipers, being the standard infantry of 1986 and coming into prominence during the 2nd season of the Sundoe cartoon. They did seem to replace the more basic blue shirt Cobra the Enemy Trooper that was made available earlier on in the franchise. Sporting their field pack and an assault rifle with a grenade launcher, this army builder is a fun one to own multiples of. You also had the Motor Vipers this year, who formed a driver corps that operated the Cobra Stun. The Stun was another reliable, iconic vehicle much like the HISS tank from 1983, and while not as durable as the aforementioned tank, it certainly had the speed to be effective in combat. Be careful with the flags if you happen to find them, as these do break easily.
The Cobra aerial ranks would get their superior pilots this year with the Strato Viper. They would be the pilots of the ever so cool supersonic jet known as the Night Raven. With a dual-seater cockpit and a bunch of missiles and bombs, this lengthy aircraft is probably the most gorgeous of Cobra's air legions. It even had a reconnaissance jet, giving you a 2-in-1 vehicle play value. And while the Strato Viper represents the creme de la creme Cobra pilot, you can argue that their skills are matched by the AVAC pilots. These brave souls would strap themselves into the FIREBAT jet that they came with, a vehicle that was devoid of things that pilots take for granted, such as navigational or weather instruments. Heck, it didn't even have an ejection seat. Of course, all of this leads to the quintessential Cobra centerpiece of any vintage collection, the Terror Drome. It's crazy to think that G.I. Joe as a toy franchise had the task of following up the gargantuan USS Flag of the previous year, but I don't think anyone would be disappointed with this follow-up playset. With multiple levels in its structure, large gun turrets for defense, rooms with opening doors, and a launch bay for the FIREBAT, the Terror Drome's features and play options are seemingly limitless. Do check out the various Terror Drome playset review videos on both the Toy Connections and HoodedCobraCommander788 YouTube channels when you have some free time.
This year of G.I. Joe would also feature some Sears exclusive offerings, much like prior years. This year's exclusives, though, were Dreadnok based. There was the Air Assault set, which included recolors of the Cobra Fang and the G.I. Joe Skyhawk. The other Sears exclusive would be the Dreadnok Ground Assault set, which consisted of recolors of the Cobra Stinger 4-wheel drive vehicle and the G.I. Joe Ram Cycle. Both sets are highly desirable and highly collectible, being among the rarer items in the vintage G.I. Joe range. The Dreadnok selection would be rounded out this year with the Swampfire. Note that this was a vehicle that could function both in air as a helicopter as well as being able to serve as a water-based vehicle. For smaller offerings, the Cobra Hydro Sled was a neat little water vehicle that came with a couple of torpedoes, and Cobra's small battle station this year was the Surveillance Port, which could serve as a radar outpost and was defended by some machine guns. We'd also see this year's edition of the carded battle gear sets. This would be accessory pack number 4 and would be Cobra themed instead, containing a bunch of recolored Cobra weaponry from the prior years. While that covers the toy line, the comics by Marvel would naturally continue this year. Issues this year would consist of many key moments, including the promotion of Hawk to the rank of General, as well as several key first appearances, such as that of the COBRA TERROR DROME, and not to mention the comic debut appearance of Sergeant Slaughter. Serpentor would make his first appearance as well to contest Cobra Commander for supremacy of the Cobra forces. Completing the trifecta approach of toys, comics, and cartoons, the Sunbow series would have its second full-length season this year, with 30 full-length episodes, some of which we've already referenced here. This, of course, would include fabulous events such as the timeless Arise Serpentor Arise 5-part run that kicked off this season, and all of this would build up to the eventual G.I. Joe animated movie the following year. All in all, there was a lot to love about G.I. Joe in 1986, and we hope you've enjoyed this stroll down memory lane. Whether you have first-hand memories of the cast of characters discussed here, or if you came into G.I. Joe later on, you're always welcome to look back at videos such as these and join the discussion in the comments section below to share your memories regarding this glorious year of the special cast of our favorite real American heroes and the ruthless terrorist organization that antagonized them. Also, be sure to let us know which G.I. Joe character, vehicle, or playset was your favorite among the ones that we've shown here. And if you enjoyed this video, don't go anywhere just yet. I'm going to put the rest of my G.I. Joe A Real American Hero Vintage History playlist that you can click on right over here, or for a closer look at the COBRA TERROR DROME as a playset, you can click on this video right over here. And with that, yo Joe, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks again, and take care.